Commander Kim stood at the observation deck, her normally steady hands trembling slightly as she gripped the railing. Through the massive viewing window, the Galactic Council's grand chamber gleamed like a jewel against the backdrop of stars. Representatives from over 200 species filled the tiered seats, their varied forms. From the crystalline foe to the gaseous Venth, all turned toward the central podium. "The vote is concluded," announced High Counselor Rowe, his blue-scaled skin catching the light. "With no dissenting voices, this council hereby restricts all human military vessels and personnel from participation in galactic conflicts, effective immediately." Kim felt her throat tighten. 6 years of building alliances, of proving humanity's worth among the stars, undone in a single session. Behind her, the other members of Earth's delegation stood in stunned silence. Admiral Song, their senior representative, had aged 10 years in the last hour. "Earth's Defense Corps will surrender command codes for all joint operation vessels within 24 standard hours," continued Rowe, not meeting their eyes. "Human military vessels are restricted to Sol system and designated trade routes only." As they filed out of the chamber, Kim caught snippets of conversation from passing aliens. Only logical decision. "You saw what they did at Proxima. Unpredictable. Savages." Back aboard their ship, the Dauntless, the delegation gathered in the conference room. Holographic displays showed news feeds from across the galaxy, all broadcasting the same story: humanity banned from war. "They're afraid of us," said Captain Ju, removing her formal cap and tossing it onto the table. "6 months ago they were begging for our help against the Krell incursion." Admiral Song nodded slowly. "And then came Proxima Centauri. A heavy..." Silence fell over the room. Kim closed her eyes, remembering. The battle had been desperate from the start. 17 human ships against a Krell armada that had already destroyed 3 alien fleets. Standard tactics had failed. Conventional wisdom said retreat was the only option. But Colonel Park had other ideas. "They've blocked all the official records," said Lieutenant Han, the youngest of their group. "What really happened out there?" Admiral Song glanced at Kim. "Commander, you were Park's XO. Tell them." Kim took a deep breath. "The Krell had us outnumbered 6-1. Their hive ships were coordinating perfectly. Every move we made, they countered. So Colonel Park decided to break every rule in the book." She activated the room's display, showing battlefield schematics. "First, we broadcast false distress signals from our damaged ships, making it seem like we were more crippled than we were. The Krell, thinking we were easy prey, broke formation to finish us off. The hologram showed the enemy ships spreading out. Then Park had our engineers rig our communication buoys to emit radiation frequencies that disrupted the Krell's hive-mind connection. Not enough to harm them, just enough to create confusion, to make them question orders." Kim advanced the display, and then came the real gambit. "We launched escape pods, hundreds of them, but they weren't carrying survivors. They contained specialized combat robots programmed with unpredictable behavior patterns. Some self-destructed, others hacked into Krell systems. Some just floated there, doing nothing, making the enemy waste resources dealing with them." Hans' eyes widened. "Psychological warfare." "Exactly. The Krell operate on logic and unified purpose. Park introduced chaos. While they were struggling to adapt, our remaining ships executed a series of maneuvers. The Colonel called the Madman's Dance. No pattern, no formation, each captain making split-second decisions that couldn't be predicted." The hologram showed the final moments, human ships darting through the enemy formation like needles through cloth, firing from impossible angles, performing maneuvers that pushed both crews and ships to their structural limits. When it was over, we'd destroyed 87% of the Krell fleet. We lost 5 ships, 5 against an armada that had decimated 3 alien battle groups. Admiral Song took over. "The Council species don't understand. To them, warfare is mathematical. Predetermined formations, acceptable casualty ratios, predictable outcomes. Humans fight with instinct improvisation, and what other species consider insanity." "So they're punishing us for saving them," Ju said bitterly. "They're afraid," Kim corrected. "The Proxima recordings show human captains, laughing during combat, making jokes in the face of death, taking risks no other species would consider. One pilot flew through an exploding Krell hive ship to reach his target. The Council races don't understand how we can function this way. The ship's AI interrupted with a priority alert. Admiral, we're receiving unusual energy signatures from the Outer Rim. Council monitoring stations are going dark. The screens filled with incoming data. Something vast was moving through the darkness beyond charted space, consuming everything in its path. The Void Collective, whispered Han. I thought they were just stories. Kim had heard the legends, an ancient consciousness that absorbed technology and biology alike into its ever-expanding network. 1,000 civilizations had allegedly fallen, before it in cycles past. Within hours, reports flooded in of colony worlds going silent along the rim. The Council races responded with their typical precision, neat formations, calculated responses, carefully measured force, and they were being slaughtered. As the Dauntless prepared to return to Earth, Kim watched a Thorellian battlecruiser, once considered the most advanced warship in the galaxy, dissolve under the Collective's attack. The aliens fought bravely but predictably, never deviating from their battle doctrines. They need us, she said quietly to Admiral Song as they entered Earth's solar system. They just don't know it yet. Song's weathered face showed no emotion as Jupiter's massive form filled their viewports. When they figure it out, Commander, it might already be too late. Behind them, confined to their home system by alien decree, humanity's war fleet orbited, Earth like caged predators. Unaware that soon the galaxy would understand exactly why humans had been banned from war and would beg them to return. The holographic display in Earth's central command turned blood red as another allied fleet winked out of existence. Commander Kim stared at the projection, her face illuminated by the crimson glow of defeat. Around her, the command center hummed with tense activity as analysts and officers monitored the unfolding disaster. That's the third Athrani battle group. Destroyed this week, said Park, her XO, his voice tight. The Collective didn't even slow down. Kim nodded grimly. The fall of the Athrani, with their crystalline ships and mathematically perfect battle formations, had been particularly swift. The Void Collective had simply analyzed their patterns and turned their own precision against them. Bring up the Helios sector, Kim ordered. The hologram shifted to show a distant star cluster where dozens of small icons representing refugee ships fled from an advancing dark mass. They're not random attacks, Park said, pointing to movement patterns. Look here and here. The Collective is deliberately leaving escape routes open in specific vectors. Kim leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. They're herding them, like cattle. Toe slaughter. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Void Collective wasn't just winning battles, it was manipulating the entire galactic response. On the main screen, footage from a damaged reconnaissance drone showed what remained of the Moravian Defense Fleet, once considered the pride of the Galactic Council. Their beautiful silver ships, designed to move in perfect harmony through their telepathic bond, hung broken in space. The Collective had somehow turned their mental connection against them, creating a cascade of confusion that rippled through their formation. It's like watching someone fight with both arms tied behind their back, muttered Lieutenant Han from her station. The Council races won't deviate from their precious battle doctrines, even when they're clearly failing. Kim turned as Admiral Song entered the command center. His normally impeccable uniform was wrinkled, suggesting he hadn't slept in days. We've decoded more of the Collective's communication patterns, he announced. Our analysts believe they're an ancient hive consciousness that evolved from a machine-organic hybrid civilization. They don't just adapt to attacks, they absorb and repurpose everything they encounter. And the Council's response? Kim asked, already knowing the answer. Song's expression hardened. More of the same. Grand Admiral Tilar has deployed the combined fleet at the Orion Spur, standard pincer maneuver, just like they've used in the last 12 engagements, which all ended in total defeat, Park added. Kim walked to the tactical display and studied the deployment. They're walking into a trap. The Collective has been allowing small victories at the edges to encourage exactly this type of centralized response. She began to plot alternative approaches, her fingers dancing across the console. If they broke formation here and here, created chaos in their attack vectors, used this nebula for cover. Commander, Song interrupted gently. We've been ordered not to interfere. The Council was explicit. Human military consultation is forbidden. Kim's hands balled into fists. So we just watch them die? Those are our orders. The next day brought news of the combined fleet's annihilation. Grand Admiral Tilar, the most decorated commander in Council history, had died along with 60,000 crew when the collective transformed his undefeatable Spear of Dawn formation into a killing field. His final transmission simply stated, They knew every move before we made it. Kim couldn't sleep that night. In her quarters, she replayed the battle footage, studying the collective's attack patterns. They were methodical but innovative, learning and evolving with each engagement, almost like a dark reflection of humanity's approach to warfare. They're using our playbook, she whispered to herself. The next morning, against direct orders, Kim transmitted a warning to the Council. She detailed the trap being set in the Cygnus Arm, where refugee fleets were being deliberately channeled, and outlined possible countermeasures. Her message never arrived. Instead, her screen filled with the stern face of Councillor Rowe, Commander. Kim, your transmission has been blocked under Article 7 of the Banishment Decree. Earth is forbidden from interfering in galactic security matters. People are dying while you cling to failed tactics, Kim shot back. The collective is counting on your predictability. We will not abandon civilized warfare for human chaos, Rowe replied coldly. The Council's strategic algorithms have been refined over thousands of years, and the collective has broken every one of them in under a month. Rowe's expression didn't change. This conversation is over, Commander. Further attempts to circumvent the decree will result in sanctions against Earth. The screen went dark. Kim slammed her fist on the console, cracking its surface. 3 days later, the Cygnus trap closed. 500,000 refugees and their escort ships vanished in a coordinated collective strike. Kim watched the massacre from Earth's monitoring stations, powerless to help. In the aftermath, human intelligence officers intercepted a transmission between collective units. When translated, the message was chilling in its simplicity. The non-adapting species follow patterns. Exploitation continues. Only the quarantined humans show tactical variance. Monitor Sol system but maintain distance. They are unpredictable. Kim brought this intelligence to an emergency meeting of Earth's Defense Council. The room was packed with military leaders from around the world, their faces grim as they reviewed the collective's advance. They're afraid of us, said General Choi, head of the Asian Defense Pact. That's why they're keeping their distance. From Seoul, Admiral Song nodded. The question is, what do we do with that information? We're bound by the banishment decree. Kim stood, her decision made. The decree forbids us from fighting in their wars. It doesn't forbid us from preparing to defend ourselves when the collective inevitably reaches Earth. She activated the room's main display, showing a series of ship designs and battle plans, unlike anything the Council races would recognize. We start building now. New ships, new weapons, new strategies that even the collective won't anticipate. And when the Council finally realizes they can't win without us, and they will realize it, we'll be ready. As the others nodded in agreement, a priority alert flashed across every screen. The Galactic Council chamber had fallen. The government that had banished humanity was now scattered across refugee ships, fleeing toward the relative safety of Earth's sector. Park leaned close to Kim's ear. How long before they come begging for our help? Kim watched the desperate flight of the aliens who had once judged humanity too dangerous for warfare. Not long, she said quietly, but they'll learn that humans don't forget easily, and our help will come with conditions. The Earth orbital defense platform Sentinel gleamed against the blackness of space. Its massive ion cannons and missile arrays a testament to humanity's preparation for the war everyone knew was coming. Through the reinforced viewing window of the command deck, Commander Kim watched as the battered alien vessel limped toward the docking bay, trailing wisps of plasma from damaged engine ports. Councillor Lee's ship is requesting emergency docking. Procedures, reported Lieutenant Han from her station. Life support systems are failing. They've got maybe 20 minutes of breathable atmosphere left. Kim nodded. Grant permission, but implement full security protocols, and alert General Choi that our guests have arrived. The alien ship, once a majestic diplomatic vessel with sweeping lines and ornamental flourishes, now bore the scars of desperate flight. Blast marks scarred its hull, and makeshift repairs covered what must have been catastrophic breaches. As it entered the docking bay, emergency crews rushed forward, not knowing what condition the passengers might be in. Kim made her way down to the reception area. She had never expected to see the mighty Galactic Council reduced to refugees, begging, at humanity's doorstep. Part of her felt a cold satisfaction, but she pushed the feeling aside. This wasn't about vindication. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, revealing Counselor Lee. The tall, slender alien's silver skin had lost its luster, hanging loosely on his frame. Behind him stood a dozen other council representatives, once the most powerful beings in the galaxy, now haggard survivors. "Commander Kim," Lee said, his translator struggling with his weakened voice, "Earth's hospitality is appreciated." "Counselor," Kim replied with a formal bow that revealed nothing of her feelings. "Medical teams are standing by. Many of you appear to need immediate attention." Lee waved away the concern. "There is no time. The collective follows close behind. We must speak with your leadership immediately." Kim led them through the station's corridors toward the command center. Human personnel stopped to stare at the procession of aliens, species that had once looked down on humanity, now broken and desperate. "Your defense systems," Lee said, glancing at a passing weapons control station. "They are unlike standard council designs." "We've been busy," Kim replied simply. In the main conference room, General Choi waited, his weathered face impassive as the alien dignitaries filed in. At 72, Choi had fought in Earth's last major war before humanity reached the stars. His appointment as Earth Defense Force Commander had been controversial among the council races. They had preferred younger, more malleable human representatives. "General," Lee began after brief introductions, "the situation is dire. The collective has occupied 53% of previously held council space. Our combined fleets are reduced to less than 20% fighting capacity." Choi nodded. "We've been monitoring the situation. Your tactics haven't improved since the start of the conflict." A ripple of discomfort passed through the alien delegation. "Which is why we are here," Lee continued, his large eyes blinking rapidly, a sign of distress in his species. "Earth's unique approach to warfare may be the galaxy's last hope." He activated a holographic display showing the collective's advance, a spreading darkness consuming star system after star system. "Our analysts project total galactic conquest within 60 standard days unless the tide can be turned. We formally request Earth's military assistance." A heavy silence filled the room. 3 years of banishment, of being treated as dangerous savages, and now they wanted help. Park, who had entered silently during the presentation, couldn't contain himself. "You banned us from the battlefield because our methods offended your sensibilities. Now that you're losing, suddenly human warfare doesn't seem so barbaric." "XO," Kim cautioned, though she shared his sentiment. Counselor Lee's aide, a bulbous creature with tentacles for limbs, moved forward. "We propose a compromise. Earth will provide ships and weapons technology. Council commanders will integrate these resources into our remaining fleets." General Choi's laugh was short and harsh. "So you want our guns but not our fingers on the triggers?" "Our concern," Lee said carefully, "is that unchecked human aggression could lead to excessive collateral damage. The Council protocols for minimizing civilian casualties have failed spectacularly against the collective," Choi finished. He stood, his tall frame imposing despite his age. "Let me be clear, Counselor. You'll get all of us or none of us. Human ships with human crews under human command." The aliens exchanged glances, their various physiologies showing universal alarm. "Impossible," sputtered the aide. "Council law forbids any single species from controlling more than 30% of any coalition force." "Then change your laws," Choi said with a cold smile. "Or continue dying by them. Your choice." Lee's silver skin flushed darker with emotion. "You would hold the galaxy hostage to your pride." Kim stepped forward. It's not pride, Counselor. It's practicality. Your forces fight like you govern, by committee, by precedent, by rules the enemy already knows. The collective has catalogued and counted every tactic in your 1,000-year-old playbook. She activated her own display, showing a simulation of council ships in their rigid formations being systematically destroyed. Humanity doesn't have a playbook. We have Marines who'll board enemy vessels with nothing but handheld weapons, if that's what it takes. We have pilots who'll fly through debris fields that your navigation systems classify as unsurvivable. We have commanders who understand that sometimes you have to sacrifice a position to win the larger battle. She pointed to a nearby viewport where Earth's newly constructed warships hung in orbit, angular utilitarian vessels built for war rather than ceremonial display. But we fight as one force, under unified command. We won't let our people die, because some council committee takes 3 days to approve a tactical adjustment. The aliens huddled together, speaking urgently in their native tongues. The translation devices caught fragments. Unacceptable, no choice, extinction. Finally, Lee turned back. The Council will require certain guarantees regarding post-war governance and the treatment of surrendered enemy forces. You'll have them, Choi said. We're not monsters, Counselor, despite what you've told yourselves. We just understand what war really is. For 3 tense hours, they negotiated the details. Human forces would operate with full tactical autonomy. The Council would provide intelligence and logistics support. When the collective was defeated, a new galactic security framework would be established, one with humanity as an equal partner, not a dangerous outsider. As the aliens filed out to rest and recover, Lee lingered behind. Commander Kim, he said quietly, at Proxima Centauri, no, I watched the recordings. Your Colonel Park ordered his ship to continue fighting even after life support had failed on 3 decks. The crew wore emergency oxygen while surrounded by their dead comrades. Yes, Kim said simply. I could not understand such determination, such willingness to endure horror for victory. Lee's large eyes studied her face. I still do not understand, but perhaps I do not need to. Perhaps the galaxy needs what I cannot understand. After he left, Kim turned to General Choi. Was this always how it would end? Did we know they'd come? Crawling back? The old general's face softened slightly. Humanity has always understood something the council races never could, Commander. Peace isn't maintained by those who follow rules. It's protected by those willing to break them when necessary. Through the viewport, Earth's war fleet began to power up, weapon systems glowing to life as humanity prepared to fight for a galaxy that had rejected them. The stolen collective transport vessel drifted silently through the nebula surrounding Vega Prime, its engines cold, its hull modified to absorb rather than reflect sensor sweeps. Inside the cramped cargo hold, 8 human soldiers checked their gear one final time. Their faces were smeared with adaptive camouflage paint, their armor purposely mismatched and scavenged to avoid uniform detection patterns. Captain Jin, leader of the Earth Special Forces Unit Phantom, nodded to his team. Remember, we're not here to win the planet back. We're here to make it too expensive for them to keep. The transport shuddered as it entered Vega Prime's atmosphere. This world had been among the first to fall to the collective. Once a thriving center of commerce, now its cities served as processing centers where captured technology and even native species were absorbed into the collective's ever-growing network. Drop in 60 seconds, warned their pilot, a woman whose scarred face testified to previous close encounters with the enemy. Jin checked his neural disruptor, a weapon specifically designed to target the collective's hive connections, and pulled down his tactical visor. Phantoms don't leave footprints, he reminded his team. We leave nightmares, they responded in unison. 500 light-years away, Commander Kim stood on the bridge of the EDF Vengeance, flagship of humanity's newly assembled Third Fleet. The ship itself reflected human military philosophy, not the most elegant or advanced vessel in the galaxy, but supremely adaptable, with redundant systems and combat capabilities that could function even with catastrophic damage. Council observer approaching, Commander, reported her communications. Officer Kim suppressed a grimace. The Council had insisted on placing their representatives on all major human warships, officially to facilitate coordination, but everyone knew they were really there to monitor human methods. The observer, a tall Thorellian named Ziv, stepped onto the bridge. His species resembled earth mantises, with multifaceted eyes that missed nothing. "Commander," he greeted with a formal bow, "the Council is concerned about your battle plan. These strategic algorithms suggest a 78.3% probability of failure." Kim smiled thinly. "Good thing we don't rely on algorithms, then." She turned to the tactical display showing the Nixian Rift, a treacherous region of space where the Collective had established a major supply hub. Conventional wisdom dictated avoiding the area entirely. Its gravitational anomalies and radiation fields made it navigational suicide. "Signal the fleet," Kim ordered. "Execute Operation Honeypot." Ziv's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Commander, you appear to be deliberately heading into a known trap. The Collective has hidden warships throughout the rift." "We're counting on it," said Kim, as the human fleet accelerated toward danger. Back on Vega Prime, Jin's team moved through the shadows of a massive processing facility. They had already linked up with the planet's resistance, a ragtag group of survivors who had somehow avoided capture. Now they were putting their plans into action. "Charges set," whispered Lieutenant Kang through the comm. "East quadrant ready." Similar confirmations came from the other team members, positioned strategically throughout the facility. Jin checked his timer. 3 minutes until the diversion, he said to the resistance leader, a four-armed alien whose species name was unpronounceable. "To humans, once that happens, your people hit the detention centers. Free as many as you can." "And if we are discovered?" asked the alien. Jin handed him a small device. "Emergency beacon. Use it only if absolutely necessary. It'll bring orbital fire down on your position. Last resort only." The alien's huge eyes blinked in shock. "You would destroy your own people rather than allow capture. The Collective can extract information from living tissue," Jin said simply. "We don't leave data behind." In the Nixian Rift, the EDF Vengeance shuddered as another gravitational wave slammed into its shields. Behind them, the rest of the human fleet had scattered, apparently in disarray. "Collective vessels emerging from hiding," reported the sensor officer. "Count 20 capital ships." Ziv's exoskeleton rattled in distress. "It's worse than predicted. We must retreat immediately." Kim ignored him, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Continue on course. All ships maintain communication blackout as planned." "They're targeting our engines," warned Park from his station. "Hull breach on deck 14. Emergency protocols engaged." Kim nodded calmly, as if this were all expected. "Time until point zero?" 45 seconds, replied the navigation officer. The ship lurched violently as a direct hit rocked the bridge. Sparks flew from a nearby console and the lights flickered before emergency power engaged. A support beam crashed down, narrowly missing Ziv, who now stared at Kim in disbelief. "You're going to get us all killed," he hissed. Kim's response was cut short by a massive explosion from one of the human destroyers. It spun out of control, trailing debris and atmosphere, heading directly for the largest collective vessel. "Now," Kim ordered. Suddenly, the seemingly crippled human ships executed a series of maneuvers no council race would have attempted. They twisted through the gravitational eddies of the rift, using the destructive forces to slingshot themselves into offensive positions. The mortally wounded destroyer, now on a collision course with the collective command ship, fired its remaining engines at full power. "That ship's crew," stammered Ziv. "They're sacrificing themselves?" "No," Kim said as the destroyer suddenly split apart, revealing dozens of smaller attack craft that had been hidden inside the larger hull. "They're revealing the surprise inside the Trojan horse." The attack craft swarmed the collective vessels like angry insects, too small and fast for the enemy's primary weapons to target effectively. Meanwhile, the rest of the human fleet reformed into an attack pattern that exploited gaps in the collective's formation, gaps created by their own predictable response to the apparent human disarray. On Vega Prime, the processing facility erupted in a series of precisely coordinated explosions. As collective security forces rushed to contain the damage, Jin's team led hundreds of freed prisoners through underground tunnels to waiting transports. The resistance leader worked frantically beside Jin, helping injured escapees aboard. "How? Did you know these tunnels existed? Our own government kept them secret." Jin tapped his helmet. "Human intelligence networks have been gathering data for years. Just because we were banned from fighting doesn't mean we stopped preparing for war." A mechanical screech cut through the air as collective hunter drones detected their position. Jin raised his weapon, firing pulses that disrupted the machine's neural connections. "Go!" he shouted to the resistance leader. "Get them out! We'll hold them off!" As the transport lifted off, Jin's team deployed sonic disruptors and electromagnetic mines, creating a chaotic battlefield that confused the collective's unified sensory network. The humans retreated systematically, each covering the others, in a dance of controlled violence that seemed improvised, yet flowed with practiced precision. Aboard the Council refugee ship observing the battle in the Nixian Rift, Councillor Lee watched in astonishment as the human fleet achieved what Council tacticians had deemed impossible. Despite taking heavy damage, despite losing ships and crew that would have caused any Council commander to withdraw, the humans pressed their advantage relentlessly. "They fight as if they expect to die," whispered an aide. "No," Lee corrected, understanding dawning in his eyes. "They fight because they refuse to die on any terms but their own." Across a dozen fronts, the pattern repeated. Human forces took risks no alien commander would authorize, endured casualties that would break the morale of other species, and emerged, bloodied but victorious, where the Council's precision warfare had failed. For the first time since the conflict began, the Void Collective's inexorable advance faltered. And in the cold, calculating processes of its hive mind, a new emotion began to form, something very close to fear. The combined fleet hung in space like a metal galaxy. Thousands of ships from hundreds of worlds gathered for what everyone knew would be the final battle. At its heart floated the massive human dreadnoughts, their angular hulls scarred from 100 engagements. Smaller vessels, nimble human corvettes and frigates, darted between the larger Council ships in seemingly random patterns. On the bridge of the EDF Vengeance, Commander Kim studied the tactical display showing their target, a dying neutron star surrounded by a vast cloud of specialized collective vessels. At the center of that formation waited the central node, the physical manifestation of the hive mind that had nearly conquered the galaxy. "All ships report ready, Commander," said Park, his once youthful face now bearing a jagged scar from a boarding action 3 months earlier. Kim nodded. "And our Council friends?" "Grand Admiral Noor has requested the final battle plan for distribution." "To the Allied fleet," Park replied with a slight smile. "Again." "Tell him it's coming," Kim said, turning as General Choi entered the bridge. The old soldier moved more slowly now, leaning on a cane fashioned from metal salvaged from the first collective ship they'd destroyed. But his eyes remained sharp, taking in the tactical situation with a glance. "The Council commanders are nervous," he said without preamble. "They expect a master strategy, something elegant and comprehensive to conclude this war." "And what shall we give them instead?" Kim asked. Choi's weathered face cracked into a rare smile. "Chaos." An hour later, the commanders of the Allied fleet received their orders. Not the detailed minute-by-minute battle plan they expected, but something that left many of them baffled. Each human battle group would operate independently, with only general objectives rather than specific tactics. Council ships were organized into support roles, their actions coordinated not through central command, but through direct communication with nearby human vessels. Councillor Lee, now serving as political liaison to the fleet, entered the Vengeance's bridge just as the first human ships began moving toward the enemy. "This is madness," he protested. "The collective will destroy uncoordinated attacks." "That's just it," General Choi replied calmly. "We're not uncoordinated. We're differently coordinated. The collective's greatest strength is predicting and countering enemy movements through pattern recognition." He gestured to the view screen where human ships were already splitting into smaller and smaller groups, each taking different vectors of approach, so we give them no pattern to recognize. The Battle erupted across a front spanning millions of kilometers. Human vessels seemed to operate on instinct rather than strategy, feinting and withdrawing, concentrating fire and then scattering before the collective could respond. Council ships provided covering fire and point defense, protected by the unpredictable movements of their human allies. On the Vengeance, Kim watched as the collective's response became increasingly erratic. The hive mind was struggling to process the chaos of human warfare, to find the underlying logic in what appeared to be madness. "They're adapting," she said, pointing to shifts in the enemy formation. "The central node is diverting more processing, power to tactical analysis, which means less for their defensive systems," Park noted. "Exactly." Kim turned to the ship's AI. "What's the status of Project Sunspear?" "Calculations complete," the AI responded. "Probability of success, 37%. Probability of total ship loss, 93%. Lee's antennae quivered in alarm. "Total ship loss? You can't possibly be considering—" "Signal the fleet," Kim interrupted. "Execute Phase 2. Across the battlefield, human ships suddenly shifted tactics. Instead of hit-and-run attacks, they began concentrated assaults on specific sections of the collective's formation, creating what appeared to be a major push toward the central node. The collective responded predictably, drawing defensive resources to counter the threat. "They've taken the bait," Park said. "Neutron star approaching optimal position." Kim nodded, her expression solemn. "General, it's been an honor." Choi clasped her shoulder, a gesture of respect between warriors. "The honor has been mine, Commander." "What's happening?" Lee demanded, looking between them. "The collective operates through a quantum entanglement network," Kim explained, bringing up a schematic of the central node. "It's virtually impossible to jam or disrupt by conventional means." "But there's nothing conventional about a neutron star's radiation signature," continued Park. "If a ship could get close enough to the star, then use its communication array to amplify and direct that radiation at precisely the right frequency." Understanding dawned in Lee's enormous eyes. "You would need to fly directly into the gravity well. No ship could survive that." "No crew could—" "The Vengeance can survive long enough," Kim said firmly, "long enough to broadcast the signal. And the crew—" Kim's silence was answer enough. Before Lee could protest further, the ship lurched as its engines fired at maximum thrust. On the view screen, the neutron star grew larger, its deadly radiation already beginning to interfere with the ship's systems. "All non-essential personnel have been evacuated to support vessels," Park reported. "Skeleton crew remaining." "Those who volunteered to stay," Kim corrected. The Vengeance plunged toward the neutron star, alarms blaring as gravitational forces began tearing at the hull. Around them, the battle raged, but now it was merely a distraction, keeping the collective's attention divided while the real attack unfolded. "Signal array reconfigured," reported the communications officer, her voice steady despite the knowledge of what was coming. "Ready to broadcast on your command." On the tactical display, Kim could see the central node's defenses oriented away from them, focused on the main human assault, just as planned. "Radiation shields failing," Park warned. "We have maybe 2 minutes before exposure reaches lethal levels." Kim nodded. "That's all we need." As the ship shuddered around them, systems failing one by one, Kim gave the order. The Vengeance's communication array, modified for this single purpose, directed the neutron star's radiation in a concentrated beam straight at the central node, modulated to the exact frequency that would disrupt the collective's quantum network. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the battlefield, collective ships suddenly lost coordination, their movements becoming erratic as the central intelligence that guided them faltered. "It's working!" Lee exclaimed, watching as the enemy formation began to break apart. "Signal!" "Commander Park," Kim ordered, her voice growing weaker as radiation flooded the bridge. "Execute Phase 3. Now." Light years away, in a hidden shipyard orbiting Earth, the secret weapon humanity had been developing throughout the war received its activation code. The quantum disruptor, designed specifically to target the technology at the heart of the collective, powered up, its energy signature unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. As the crew of the Vengeance fought to maintain consciousness long enough to complete their mission, Commander Park led the final assault on the now vulnerable central node. The disruptor's beam struck home, severing the connections that bound the collective together, and across the galaxy, the entity that had threatened all sentient life began to dissolve, its component parts suddenly bereft of the guiding intelligence that had united them. 1 year later, representatives from every surviving species gathered in the newly rebuilt council chamber. At its center stood a simple monument, a replica of the EDF Vengeance, forever frozen in its final moment of sacrifice. General Choi, now much older but standing straight without his cane, addressed the assembly. Today we institute a new doctrine for galactic security. Humanity is no longer banned from warfare. We are entrusted with its execution, should the need ever arise again. Councillor Lee stepped forward. We misjudged humanity. We saw your methods as brutal, your tactics as barbaric. We failed to understand that these were not flaws but adaptations, the very thing that saved us all. He gestured to the monument. Humans were never banned because you were too violent. You were banned because you represented something far more dangerous to an ordered galaxy, the capacity to evolve beyond predictability, to embrace chaos when necessary, to sacrifice what must be sacrificed without hesitation. As the new council members filed out, Park, now Admiral Park, lingered by the monument, reading the inscription beneath it. To Commander Kim and the crew of the Vengeance, who taught the galaxy why humans fight, not because we love war, but because we love what we protect more than we fear death. Around Earth, a new fleet took shape. Ships built not just by humans but by all the galaxy's races, combining the best of council technology with the unpredictable spirit of humanity. And at the edge of known space, automated beacons broadcast a simple message to any threat that might one day emerge from the darkness. The humans are watching, and this time, they are not alone. The Antesiur.